Hey, good afternoon. My name is Tubaule, and today is Tuesday, February the 27th, 2024, and the time now is 5:30 p.m. Many consider me to be young, and yes, fairly so. Yes, my life is progressing, but for the past few years, I have lived my life based on a very significant African proverb, which reads, until the lions have their own historians, the tales of the hunt shall always glorify the hunter. Once again, it reads, until the lions have their own historians, the tales of the hunt shall always glorify the hunter. Simple meaning. Now, the hunter could have been very scared. The hunter could have been lying. The hunter probably did not even go on the hunt. But no one is there to tell the lion story. So who is telling the story? It's the hunter. The lion could have already been hurt. Maybe another hunter actually hurt the lion. Or perhaps the lion was hurt because the lion had gotten into a fight with another male lion for the top position of the pride. And that lion is terribly hurt, making it easy for the hunter to just basically have its way. But what we got from the stories is that I, the hunter, I punched the lion here, I kicked the lion there, I stabbed the lion there, or I shot the lion there. I'm the champion. So this is very relevant to us Africans. And no other time in history has this saying been relevant than current times. Given the current COVID-19 pandemic, given the situation going on in Ukraine or the situation going on in Palestine, given the World War III, which we basically avoided in Africa during the summer. I remember during the summer where many around the world, and even some Africans, I don't know what they were thinking, basically were calling on ECOWAS, led by Nigeria, to attack Niger because the people of Niger, the military basically ousted then president. So there are many who were egging ECOWAS to go into Niger. And I remember many of the ECOWAS leaders even using words such as, or phrases such as D-Day. We are ready to go in once the order is given. Like these guys were ready to go and destroy Africa. Now, the reason I start this talk or this video with this Proverbs, okay, which reads, once again, until the lions have their own historians, tales of the hunt shall always glorify the hunter. That is because for the past years of my life, I have watched growing up how the narrative of what Africa is, what Africans are, what black people are, has been generated, regenerated, repackaged, and resold to the rest of the world by other people. This saying is relevant because if you do not tell your own story, someone else will tell your story, and they are going to make themselves the hero of your story. They are going to destroy you in your story. Now, you're watching this video because of a reason. You're watching this video from the channel, The Echoing Voice. So this is a new YouTube channel which I created about 2 or 3 days ago. And the aim of the channel, The Echoing Voice, is to engage in discussion of geopolitics, okay, make comments on political, social, cultural affair relating to the global community, analyze events based on the African perspectives. I remember growing up, when I watch the news or when we listen to the news, now in Africa, back then, growing up in the 90s, most people do not have television, or even if they have television, they couldn't catch international news as it is today, where you can view international news whether in the on the internet or with a nice, clear, flat TV. Back then, things was not as it is today. But we listened to radio. I remember every 5, 6 o'clock, the adults will gather around a radio. Sometimes they're playing checker game, and they'll listen to the news. BBC focus on Africa. So I kind of grow up, and I do believe most Africans grow up knowing a lot about what was happening around the world. And I remember even here, when I came to this country, I learned that most people did not know anything about the international world, what was happening outside of the country. So I began to learn that, wow, I know a lot about the rest of the world than my counterpart here. But then recently I've come to learn it's not about how much thing you know, but what you know. Because back then I grew up learning African stories and African narratives from other people's point of view. I remember watching TV, watching the news when I came to the United States. All I saw was white people, white men being the host, white men being the guest on these TV programs. I'm talking about these news programs. It was the case when I was in Africa, and it was the case when I came to the United States. Every time I'm watching the news, it was always white men, white men, white men that are reading the news, that are giving comment or feedback or analytics about the news, the event. I also remember back then, I could not and I did not see anybody who was not white on the news. The Chinese were never present during the news. The Indian was never present, and definitely the Africans were never present. Of course, there are limited cases when you might see an African person or an Indian or a Chinese person. And it seemed as if the role of those people were always to basically just trash the hell out of their countries and their leader. They basically were the voice that come and talk about how terrible their government or their leaders were. But then something began to change in the early 2000s. The Chinese came up with the CCTV channel. The Russians came out with Russia Today. You have what is it, France 24. You have the Australian news, Sky News. What is the German news channel? You got Al Jazeera, Telemundo, and all that. They begin to gain traction. One thing I learned, or the way I can conclude on this, is the importance of information. The Chinese at the time, in fact, if you can go back, you realize the way China has been foraying into various countries, okay, trying to fund programs or whatever. It seemed that China did not do that until its CCTV was sophisticated enough to propagate the Chinese point of view. That's when they begin to go and engage with countries, because China can do this and that, and it can be propagated or sold on the Chinese TV news program that this is what we are doing, and China can contest Western view. But then what I can say is that these countries or these institutions were learning the importance of information, the importance of controlling the narratives. Because when I was young, all we watched was CNN and BBC and Fox News. They had, okay, the American and the British broadcasting basically had monopoly to a greater extent over international information. But recently, even you got the Indians, got what is it, India Today, you have Republic TV. These countries are realizing, or they've realized the importance of information. Let's flash forward today. When you watch news discussion on international affair, about international relations, yes, you're gonna see white men, you're gonna see white women, but also you will see Chinese talking. What does this say? Does it matter what the West might want, might feel? You cannot ignore China. China now is a force in international relations. Whether you're talking about Chinese that has an opposite perspective, a contradictory perspective from the Chinese government's perspective or the Chinese country's perspective, or you having a perspective of or by a Chinese person that is pro-China or pro-Chinese government. Whether that the case, you will find a Chinese person in international news talking when you're even talking about the Western news. And in this case, you also have the China's international news where they give the Chinese perspective. Today, you can see what is it? India Today, Republic TV, WION. You see the Indian perspective, and I've watched. I think his name is Arnab or something like that on Republic TV. The guy, he's a giant. Like he just go. I remember when the war in Ukraine came, India was being beaten all over the place by Western governments and leaders and critics trying to paint India as a bad country that is not picking the right side. And I remember Arnab and other Indian TV news hosts basically propagated the Indian perspective and they call out the West. And I remember the Indian foreign minister, I think the name is James Shankar. The guy is good. He's sophisticated, man. This guy know his stuff. In one interview, he called out the West. Okay, he called out a European journalist by saying that in an afternoon, Europe will purchase the amount of oil from Russia in one afternoon. One afternoon, the amount that India would purchase during an entire quarter of the year. Europe can purchase such amount in just one afternoon. I don't know if I'm paraphrasing him correctly, but I remember this guy basically calling the West out or Western critics out on their stance against Russia or on their critiques of India. Today, you see French people on French news TV, news outlet, giving the French perspective. Of course, to an extent, the French perspective is an extension of the Greater West slash the United States perspective. For the English, basically, they are a champion. BBC is all over the place. You will get the British perspective, or however you want to say it. And their perspective is always the West is the champion of freedom and democracy and all this other stuff, and everybody else is the devil. I don't mean it literally. Today you will see Telemundo, okay, Spanish TV. You see from a Spanish perspective, or maybe a white Spanish perspective, or a Spanish perspective that to an extent can either be pro or anti-Western perspective. But now, when you look for the African perspective, it is still missing because Africa does not have a viable, sophisticated media outlet. Our media outlets are not international. I remember around 2003 or 4 We had the African channel that were coming about, and I haven't heard about it. I think it was but, and it's not an independent Pan Africanist voice. Today, when you hear the perspective of Africa, it is coming from people such as PLO Lumumba. The man is great, he is sophisticated, he is highly educated, highly intellectual, he knows his stuff. He talks with fact and he knows how to articulate himself. But now there's a problem. People like PLO Lumumba can never be welcome into the Western or international media news platform because his perspective, whether he is criticizing African leaders or criticizing the West or the international community for its hypocritical action or activities towards Africa, they are not going to invite him because he always say it like he means it, like it is. So PLO Lumumba, he is one of the few voices of Africa that is out there. However, the problem is PLO Lumumba has a very small platform, which is social media. Now, thank God for social media because social media, as I can conclude, is the platform of information, the spread of information, the dissemination of information that has been great to Africa. When I grew up in Africa, many did not know about Haiti. Yes, we had some guys paint pictures of slavery. We call them Rastaman. They were always smart. They were always talking revolutionary. That's it. The general masses don't know anything about slavery. Now, the 2010 earthquake in Haiti and social media made many Africans to come into contact with Haiti, but it is on social media. Like many Africans, minds and hearts and eyes were open, like, wow, so we have a black countries over there. Yes, we know about Jamaica. And Jamaicans, they are very distinct people, but many did not know about countries such as Haiti. There's a place in Colombia, I think they call them Palenque. Palenque. They were put on UNESCO list for being as a World Heritage Site. So Palenque is like a free town, I think the first free town in the America of slaves in Colombia that ran into the jungle and created a community. And a professor who was visiting Colombia, I watched his TED talk. He's talking about how he was meeting these black people who were speaking very interesting Spanish. It was kind of like Spanish, but not Spanish, because there are words within their language, the Palenque language, that kind of different. And he decided to do a research. He wanted to know what are they speaking and where did they come from. Yes, he learned that people are saying we come from somewhere in Africa. But he did his research. He tracked the transatlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage traffic, and he was able to pinpoint the language to a place in Congo. Okay, and the people in their language, they have this phrase or word called Kikongo or whatever. So the professor was able to pinpoint this people, their tribe in the region of Congo. That many Africans are watching this, and because of social media, they are learning, and we are seeing more connection being happening among Africans or people of African descent. Now we have people such as Wodamaya. He's an amazing person. This guy, I hope to meet him one day. Wodamaya and Miss Truly, they are doing Africa a wonderful job, because coming to the United States, all we were told is you stink, you dirty, you sleep in the hut, and all kinds of stuff. I remember being laughed at many times in classroom. In many cases, the teachers will initiate the conversation about Africa or Africans, or the teachers will be laughing when these American kids will make fun of us. I remember one experience I had in the classroom. One of the kids asked the teacher, or in the class, how many Africans have HIV? And one of them lift his hands up and just lift up his hands, all of them, and everybody was laughing. So I found myself in these classrooms and I was humiliated every day. There were kids who talking about how in Africa we don't wear clothes. It is not until we get on the plane, when we come to the United States, we got to the airport, that's when the U.S. immigration officers will give us clothes. So in essence, they are saying we are butt naked throughout the whole flight to America or whatever. I remember I had a Ghanaian friend. He's very cheeky, and Ghanaians or Africans, period, West Africans are very cheeky. So there was an American guy that was making fun of this Ghanaian friend, saying, "So in Africa, you're sleeping in the tree." So my Ghanaian friend's like, and he kind of good, and he like, "Yes, we sleep in the tree in Ghana and in Africa. When you go to my capital city in Ghana, Accra, you see all the big trees we sleep in. We have to claim like whatever to jump into the tree to sleep. However, in my city, Accra, the biggest tree in my city is the United States Embassy." And the American guy, the white guy who was making fun, he went off like he couldn't take it. So he tried to insult my friend, and my friend flipped it back and said, "Yes, we sleep in the tree. However, the biggest tree is your embassy." And I remember the white guy getting offended. "So you mean we sleep in tree, blah, blah, blah." And my Ghanaian friends were like, "Yeah, you Americans sleep in trees. Yes, when you come to my capital city, Accra, we all sleep in trees. The Ghanaians and the foreigners, including Americans. Right now, you go there, I will show you where your ambassador is hanging." So these are the kind of experiences that we have. So now, in terms of international relations today, watching the news, okay, you still see that the African voice is missing in international relations. And yes, social media has done a lot for us, and this is why recently you have all this push to ban TikTok, to ban people use of social media or try to monetize it. You have to subscribe to YouTube to watch video. It is something that we Africans need to push back on, because since we do not control the mainstream media, the social media, yes, there are a lot of nonsense that is going on social media, but I am seeing the African battle being fought by Africans, most especially young Africans, like Wudamaya. We have one lady, Naya Sim. We have other people. I mean, yes, sometimes you get some phrases that they use that I cannot use or I will push against, but they are telling the story of the Africans. And I mean not just Africans as the immediate folks coming from Africa, but we are talking about the greater African community. So Africa as a community, Africa as Black Africa community, and Africa with a Black diverse Africa and its diaspora. So this is what's happening right there. And this is why I create this channel, the Echoing Voice. I want to be able to spread, to tell the African perspective, okay, on international relations. And this is the reason for why this channel is going to be existing. Now, I'm going to warn you in advance. I am going to make mistake. I am going to say things that I do not mean. It's going to come out, okay? Sometimes bad. And a lot of these videos that I'm going to be making, as the one that I'm making now, I am going to have make poor editing, because I do not edit. I don't know anything about editing. I am new to this. But over time, I am going to progress, to improve. But in terms of the content of the videos, I want you to consider the fact that I will say things that I do not mean, but whenever you hear things and you feel offended, I want you to listen to it very, very directly. Calm down, be patient, very patiently, and try to pick apart what you hear me saying. And if you do that, you are going to be able to consider the fact that I do not mean no harm. One such thing that I said, I made a video a couple of minutes ago. Well, about an hour ago. I stated that I stated the weakness of Africa. And I stated that Africa is so weak, and it's so weak that If countries like the United States and even the United Kingdom or some European countries go into conference with African governments and countries, Africa is so weak that all the United States or Western countries have to do is send a chihuahua, a dog, to represent them in this conference or conferences with African governments or leaders. These chihuahuas, all they have to do is bark. And if they bark, we can guarantee that there will be a lot of concessions made. And these chihuahuas will come out successful against African governments or leaders. First of all, we do not own the means of production. We do not even own our resources. Economically, we are controlled. Financially, we are controlled. Africa has been reduced to aid receiver. So as a result, the people who give Africa the aid, these people dictate Africa's policy. And many Africans are accepting these nonsense. And this is why we need to be able to speak our truth, speak our perspective on global affair. Now, I do want to let you know that I am very afraid of what I'm going to be saying because people are being canceled left and right. And many things that I will say will be offensive to a lot of people. But I want to apologize in advance. I'm going to end here. Thank you very much for watching again. And it's me, Togbawule.